Yo, 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 what's up, party people? Welcome to another episode of Thrive and Dive, thriving in life as we dive into deeper conversations. The purpose of this show is to help you thrive, and today's episode is another episode in our Deeper Relationship series. For those who haven't been with us, I did a 4-week series at Warner University, all on relationships, and we've been playing back the sermons I've been sharing to the students because I feel that they would be beneficial to you. So this is the third lesson in our Deeper Relationship series, and the principle that we're going to be unpacking is that we must pursue clarity over intimacy. Let's check this out. And lesson number 3, what we're going to talk about today is pursue clarity over intimacy. Pursue clarity over intimacy. I heard a pastor back when I was in college share that when it comes to relationships, intimacy blinds clarity. When you get deeper with someone, whether physically, emotionally, spiritually, your objectivity to be able to evaluate a relationship decreases significantly because of one thing that we all struggle with, and it's something called infatuation. I don't know if you've ever observed a friend of yours that was in a relationship that you knew was destructive to their mental health, to their spirituality, to their development, but they thought, no, this is the best thing since Ruth and Boaz. This is the best relationship. We're a model relationship for people, but you objectively can see that. I'm sure, and if you don't have any friends that are into those type of relationships, you might be the friend that's in that relationship that everyone's saying, get out of it, but for some reason you think it's Romeo and Juliet style. So we need to understand that infatuation is a thing that causes us to lose clarity of a relationship. And there's a definition I heard from a author, Christian counselor named Gary Thomas. And here's a paraphrase of his quotation from his book, The Sacred Search. He says, infatuation is the fleeting, intense romantic attraction that most people mistake for true love. Something that is neurologically driven, short-lived, and not reliable basis for long-term commitment. So we all have this kind of built-in hardwire where we get infatuated over somebody. And all it takes is a pulse to become infatuated with somebody. It doesn't require being a love doctor. Lexi, question about that?
Do you think that is what people call the honeymoon phase?
Yeah, the honeymoon phase, exactly right. Lexi, he even shares in his book that this usually lasts a 9-month period. So if you've had a great 9-month relationship, great, your infatuation is working. But if your relationship does not exceed the 9-month milestone, then infatuation is gone, and is there actually real love and commitment in that relationship? So we just need to be mindful of infatuation. Some people call it puppy love, whatever you want to call it. But the thing is, we're all susceptible to it. I remember when I was a student here at Warner University, I transferred in as a sophomore, and I remember at the clock tower meeting this girl, and I thought, she's the one. Cancel chapel, we're having a wedding service instead. I was infatuated by this girl. It didn't take much, just a conversation and interest in me for it to be head over heels. Come to find out, she wasn't really the person I was looking for as a young Christian man. No judgment to her. I think she was a Christian, I'm not sure, but as we're going to see in a second, not all Christian relationships are created equal. Everyone's relationship with the Lord is at the same pace, if you will. So for me, I had to hear the counsel of some friends to realize, yeah, you probably shouldn't pursue her. But in my mind, I'm like, no, she's the one. I'm ready, because again, infatuation was in the driver's seat. So we've got to understand this is working against us. And it goes back to the principle, let's pursue clarity over intimacy. And I'm going to reference a book multiple times in this lesson from a guy named Ben Stuart. He's a pastor up in D.C. area. And this book's pretty popular in Christian circles. It's called Single, Dating, Engaged, and Married. I read it a couple months ago in preparation for my engagement, so I was kind of slacking. I was procrastinating a little bit. You should probably read it before you consider engagement. I read it, and I'm like, man, this thing is really good. So I'm going to share some thoughts from his book that can hopefully relate to you. And in each section of the book, the book has a section on each phase of the relationship. A section on singleness, a section on dating, and a section on engaged, and a section on married. And during the dating section of the book, he has this quote that I think aids this principle of pursuing clarity over intimacy. He writes the following in his book. He says, dating is not a status to dwell in, but a process to move through. It is a series of actions meant to lead us to a particular end, discerning whether or not we are meant to marry a particular person.
Dating exists for evaluation. I know that's a little countercultural, and some people don't date for marriage. They date because I just want to date. I just want to be in a relationship. I just want to be with somebody. But I would argue that dating, and if you're one of those old school people that do courting and you're proud about it, great, courting, dating, whatever, tomato, in my opinion, regardless of what you call it and what you do, I think the end goal, and biblically speaking, is to see whether this person's suitable for the long haul. Is this person suitable for marriage, not just a college fling, not just a one-night stand, whatever it may be. I think dating is meant for more. So with that in mind, pursue clarity over intimacy. Let's talk about what that looks like practically. And again, I'm going to use some thoughts from Ben Stuart's book, Single Dating, Engaged and Married. If you want to copy this book after we're done here, let me know. I'll purchase one for you. It's a great resource. I also already recommended this book to you guys 2 weeks ago. I have a couple copies for people. I don't know if they're here today. If you want a copy of this book as well, I'm all about providing resources where I can. So Ben Stuart, when it comes to pursuing clarity over intimacy, he says there's 2 things you should be looking for in a significant other. The first thing is character, and the second thing is chemistry. So let's park the bus at character before we jump into chemistry. And I'm specifically looking at this from a Christian worldview. I don't know everybody's background and what faith you subscribe to, but as a Christian, it's pretty crystal clear what God expects of us in finding a partner. We need to have someone who's of the same allegiance. What does that mean? Someone who serves the Lord just like we do. And I would even say, I'm talking with some non-Christian friends, they look for this too. Everybody's kind of looking for people with the same values and the same lifestyle choices, the same metaphysical beliefs is what we call it. But for the Christian, it's non-negotiable that the person you date and ultimately marry should be in alignment with you in allegiance. Because 1, that's what God asks of us. And 2, it's unfair to the other person if we become an undercover Christian, we get in a relationship with them, maybe get married to them, and they find out, oh, you are like a hardcore Christian, and they didn't sign up for that. So not only is it respectful to God, it's respectful to the person. So that's why we need to be crystal clear with our values and not talk about these conversations when we already are hitched and married, because that's just unfair to the person. So A.W. Tozer says the following. He says, the most important thing about a person is what he or she thinks. The most important thing about a person is what he or she thinks about God. Everybody has an opinion about God. Unfortunately, a lot of times in the college years, we don't really stop to contemplate what we think about God. We've got a lot of things going on. We got sports, we got school, we do got a relationship maybe. We've got something going on, and we ignore the intentional thought process of what is God to me? And that is the most important thing you can wrestle with. Who is God to me? What does he mean to me? Is he an attachment, a supplement, or is he my Savior and Lord? And obviously, we would hope that you would engage in that in some way or form. Piggybacking on what Tozer thought, Ben Stuart writes the following. Who you think runs the universe will inform your values. Your values will shape your goals. Your goals will determine where you go in life. So yes, what you believe about who made this place will determine everything you think is important and all that you do. What you believe determines what you do. A lot of it happens subconsciously. We just do things, but there's a reason you do things. Every action has a belief system behind it. Maybe it's not an identified action. That's why we encourage you guys here at One University to practice self-complementation, reflection. Why do I do what I do? Why do I react the way I do? Why do I make the decisions I do? Because if you go down and you peel under the layers, you'll find that there's a belief system driving you to do what you do. We don't do things on accident. There's a reason for everything. So if you believe in God, and what you believe about God will determine what you value, the direction you go, and then ultimately who you end up marrying and who you pursue in a relationship. Turn with me to 2 Corinthians 6:14 if you have your Bibles. I'll have it on the screen as well, but I think it's helpful to be in your Bibles or on your phone as well, in addition to that. Excuse me. 2 Corinthians 6:14. All right, 2 Corinthians 6:14 through 16 says this. This is what Paul has to say about same allegiance. He says, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial? Or what portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God said, I will make my dwelling among them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. This is pretty straightforward, kind of strong language. Again, if you consider yourself a Christian, Paul is asking, or not asking, he's making an imperative that you should not be unequally yoked. What that means is you need to find someone who has the same allegiance. A divided house will not stand. So this isn't specifically talking about marriage, but it's talking about just relationships in general. And what Paul's not saying is that you never interact with unbelievers, right? If that were the case, how are we going to reach people for Christ? How are we going to love on this world? He's talking about your most intimate relationships. And the most intimate relationship of them all is who you eventually marry, date, and things of that nature. So that person should be in alignment with your belief systems, or else you're going to have a rift, and there's going to be trouble, and you're eventually not going to be on the same page. And I would even argue that this is a message for another time, I would even argue that your 3 closest friends, that's not romantic, should be in alignment with where you want to go in life. Because you're the compilation of your 5 closest friends. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future, is what the common phrase says. So for us, we need to be unequally yoked. And for those who've never heard the analogy of being unequally yoked, it's an agricultural illustration back in that day. And I'm sure maybe farmers do it today. I don't know, I'm not a farmer, nothing close to a farmer. But they would have 2 oxen, and they would put that wooden thing on top of them that would yoke them together. And the oxen would pull a plow, a cart, or something of that nature. And the issue was if you had oxen of 2 separating sizes and strength. If one's stronger and the other is weaker, they're not going to go straight. They have to be balanced out. So similarly, you and your partner need to not necessarily be of equal strength physically, but need to be going in the same direction with your goals, your values, your commitments in life. Because like I said earlier, if someone has a different idea of where they want to go, it's going to pull you guys apart and separate you guys. Lexi, another question?
Would you say, because obviously people might be further in their walk than other people, when they're dating, would you say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Someone actually asked this last week, and I'll share the same answer since you were here, but pardon me for being redundant. My wife, when I met her, she was only a Christian for 6 months. I've been a Christian since I was 5. But it's not about how long you've been a Christian, it's about how hard are you following Jesus. So if the person is not, it's kind of like, being like a cultural Christian, in church for Easter and Christmas, that's it. I would say, maybe you need to consider someone who's maybe it's more of a priority in their life. But in terms of how long they've been Christian, I don't think it's relevant personally, but I'm a little subjective since that was my situation. All right, keep it moving. Thanks, Lexi, for that question. So with that being said, this actually leads us to our next point. So thank you, Lexi, for setting that up, is that in regards to the same allegiance, we also need to be running at the same pace. Again, the statement isn't how long you've been running, is are you running at the same pace now? Because like I said, my wife started running at the same pace as me 6 months before I met her. But we're running at the same pace. Is there things she doesn't understand yet because she's new to it? 100%. And I treat that with respect and empathy, and I don't just assume she knows everything, right? And that's how we should be with all people. If we're thinking that Christianity is just the accumulation of Bible knowledge, then we've missed what Christianity is about. It's about a relationship with God. And if someone has a desire to be in a relationship with God, that's all they need to get started. Obviously, there's a process of sanctification for all my Bible people out there. Progressive sanctification, very big churchy word, which is the idea that we become more like Christ. That's the ultimate trajectory. But it doesn't matter how much they know about faith. It's how much they care to know about faith. So running at the same pace is essential to find someone of character. Because again, just think of it practically. If you take your faith really seriously, you want to be at church every Sunday, but your partner's like, I'd rather sleep in or go golfing or whatever it may be, that's going to cause a drift eventually. What are you going to do when you have kids? Are the kids going to hang out with the spouse that doesn't want to go to church, or is the kid going to go with the spouse that wants to go to church? What are the kids going to think? Why are mom and dad so divided on these priorities? So again, finding someone who's running at the same pace is essential as we pursue clarity over intimacy. All right, the second thing that we need to pursue clarity over intimacy is to have the right chemistry with our partner. And this is what a lot of people tend to talk about when they say compatibility, right? Are we compatible with each other? So, and it's important, right? I would say character is more important than compatibility, but if you find someone with character, but you guys don't relate whatsoever, it's just not it, right? And you've probably been there, I've been there. You need to find someone with chemistry. So Ben Stuart identifies 4 types of compatibility that you need to consider when you're in the dating phase. Because again, dating is all about evaluation. It's not just a status to achieve. Like, I got an achievement. I have a girlfriend. I have a boyfriend. Look at me. I feel confident now. No, it's a process of determining if they're wifey or husband material. So the 4 types of compatibility. The first one's theological compatibility. If you're new to faith, this might confuse you a little bit, but I hope it doesn't. Let me explain what I mean by this. So we're already operating off the assumption that you found a Christian significant other. Like, you guys are in the same direction, moving at the same pace, have the same allegiance. But in that field, if you will, there's differences of opinion on theological matters that goes over some of our heads, I get it, but it is important to consider. In the churchy world, we call them denominational distinctives, meaning if you're new to Christianity, there's a bunch of different denominations of Christianities, which are basically just a bunch of different styles of worshiping God. You've got Baptists, you've got Pentecostals, you've got Presbyterians, you got Lutherans, you got Catholics, right? Depending on what type of Catholicism. There's debate about which one's actually Christian and which one's not, but that's a conversation for another day. But you need to find someone, I would say, that is in alignment theologically. And this could be a further conversation down the road. You might be exploring this together. But I know for me, I have certain convictions about things that are more debatable issues. Like, the most classic debatable issues are, and I'm going to throw some big words at you, and I apologize, we'll go fast on this part, but it's important to consider. You've got to determine if you want to marry someone who's a cessationist or continuationist. What does that mean? Basically, it has to do with, do they believe you can speak in tongues and is healing still a thing? The gifts of the Spirit. That's an important thing to consider. You need to determine if you want to be an egalitarian or complementarian. Again, 2 other big words. Basically, what it means is, one says women pastors are okay, one says women pastors are not okay. And then there's other different denominational distinctives. You want a more traditional Catholic liturgical service where it's very structured, or do you want it unstructured? It feels like you're at a concert a little bit, whatever it may be. These are things to consider. Again, if you're new to Christianity, I would explore for yourself personally, where do I lean? Where are my convictions about these different things? With that being said, you got to understand your convictions too on gray matter issues. Where do you stand on alcohol? Where do you stand on modesty? Where do you stand on celebrating Halloween? Ooh, that's a tough one, right? You got to consider these things because if you have strong convictions about these issues and you don't communicate that with your significant other, eventually that elephant in the room moment is going to come and you're going to be like, oh shoot, we're totally not aligned on these convictional issues. And again, so you need to see if you have theological compatibility. The next thing is you need to have social compatibility, which basically means, do you have a good time hanging out with your significant other? Like, it's meant to be fun, guys. Like, it's not like, oh man, we don't do arranged marriages anymore. We don't do like transactional business deals where one king marries the daughter of another king. We don't do that anymore. Arranged marriages aren't a thing unless, I guess, you're Muslim or something, which is another whole story. But you can choose. God has given you freedom to choose your spouse. Isn't that so cool? Right? God gives you the freedom to choose what you want to do with your life, unless you have a specific direct calling to be a missionary to Uganda or something. God gives you the freedom to go somewhere, right? To do something. He also gives you that freedom of choosing your spouse. And it's why you get to go on this process called dating, where you evaluate. So evaluate. Do you enjoy hanging out with this person? Do you have similar interests? I've seen the whole opposites attract thing work out. So I'm not saying you guys got to enjoy like cliff jumping and going to coffee shops like to the T, but it is helpful to have similar interests, or else what are you guys going to do all day? I don't know. I guess you can have your own passions and interests too, but social compatibility is important. Next one's vocational compatibility. Basically, this is the question we're answering is, where do you guys see yourself in 5 years? Do you see yourself living in America? Do you see yourself living in Europe? You guys got to talk about this. Like I said with that missionary example, some people are called to missions. I have a friend who feels called to the Middle East. I can't say where for confidentiality and safety purposes, but that's a specific calling. Not everyone's called to that. If you feel called to the Middle East, you got to let your significant other know, like, hey, this is kind of what I think the Lord's calling me to do. Are you in alignment with that? If you're not, okay, that's fine. We move on. We find other people. What's your ideal structure? What's your vision for a family? Do you want to have kids? Do you not want to have kids? Do you want to have 4 kids, 10 kids, 1 kid? Who's going to be, are we going to have a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad? What's the arrangement going to be? Obviously, you can't address every single scenario because you don't know what the future holds, and you got to step by faith. But you can have a general idea of what you want to do. Do you want to be a working person, a stay-at-home person? These are important things to consider, or else they're going to cause friction in your relationship and your marriage. And then the last one, the most important one, guys, physical compatibility. That's obviously not the most important because it's the last one, but it is important. I don't know why Christian communities think you do not need to be attracted physically to your partner. That's a bunch of baloney, right? You're going to be waking up next to them every morning. You should at least have some physical attraction to your significant other. They ought to be cute in your eyes. Sorry, I just thought of something I listened to the other day that was funny. Like when someone, I forget how to say it, when someone makes a comment, there's someone for everyone. Like when they meet your significant other, like, I'm glad you find her attractive. It's like, it's the biggest dig ever. Like, what are you talking about? She's not attractive? But it is subjective, if that made any sense. But physical compatibility is important. But with that being said, it's not everything, right? We're all gonna get older. Our shelf life is very short, right? What your spouse looked like when you get married, as you know, looks different 10 years down the road. So it has to be more than just physical compatibility. If you're just living off of physical compatibility, we just are so cute together. Is that going to be a sustaining 50-year marriage? I don't know. I don't think so. That's why having all 4 of these is super important and not just the one. And I know it's easy to, infatuation that I talked about earlier, really drives to the physical compatibility. Oh my goodness, so beautiful, we're gonna be married, right? We've got to make sure we're going deeper than surface level compatibility. So with that being said, some points of application. I'm running along here, so let me keep it moving. We'll have any questions. So some application for you as it relates to the chemistry and clarity, or chemistry and a character. Point number 1, don't settle. Don't settle. God has someone out there for you. And I know if you're in a long season of singleness, I get it. I just got married this past year. I'm 28. It felt like it was an eternity. But don't settle. God has somebody for you that will match up to your compatibility, right? I know sometimes I feel like you're looking for a needle in the haystack to find the person that matches you completely. But if you trust God and you have high expectations, don't lower your expectation for somebody. Don't settle. Because once we start settling, then we make compromises. And when we make compromises, we lose our conviction. And we just become miserable. And when I say don't compromise, obviously, and you can ask James in the back who's been married longer than I have, there's times where you got to compromise. Like you can't just have it your way or hit the highway type of thing. But when it comes to your convictions and your beliefs, don't compromise. Like, we can go to church once a month, even though my convictions tell me I need to go every week. Don't settle. Second thing is don't avoid or prolong a necessary breakup. I'm sure we all have had relationships we've been in and we're not proud of. I definitely have. But if there's no ring on it, it's not finalized, right? Like get out of there if you're sensing that this is a necessary thing. And actually, Ben Stuart has a whole chapter on how to break up well. Because it's painful, it's rough, I get it. If you've ever been through a breakup, it sucks. But it's what's necessary, right? Don't settle, don't prolong the breakup or avoid it altogether. I know for me, speaking from experience, I was dating a girl, and 4 months in, I knew we weren't in alignment on convictional issues. The biggest is where we land on alcohol. That's a sermon for another day. And I remember, but I like her. I'm infatuated by her. I love being in a relationship. It's so fun, right? So we tabled that conversation for later. Worst decision ever. Hash it out now, figure out if it's going to work, and move on. So we went another whole year dating. And that same issue came back up. And we're like, okay, we waited a whole year, which we shouldn't have done, in my opinion. And we are still not finding clarity around this. We just got to break up. We mutually agreed, great. We broke up, sucked, but it was the right thing to do. We both felt it was the right thing to do. So for you, as you're walking through these compatibility pieces, as you're walking through these character pieces, do some personal self-inventory in your relationship now if you're in one. And I'm not saying you got to break up with them or anything like that. That's between you and the Lord. I'm just saying have somebody who can speak objectively to your situation, because again, we have that bias, we have the infatuation, and let them share with you some truth that could help you in this process. Last point, don't become too intimate. I'm gonna sound like a parent on this point, but I've heard it said so many times, and I've had personal experiences with this. The more intimate you are physically, emotionally, spiritually, the less clear things are. Because again, infatuation, I think, grows on intimacy. The more physical you get, the more you remove guardrails, the more easy it is to not see things. And the most straightforward one with this, we'll talk more next week about what does physical boundaries look like, which is always a fun topic to talk about with college students, but it needs to be talked about. If no one's here next week, we know why, physical boundaries. But what I'll share with you that are here, sneak this in real quick, is that having sex blinds clarity. If you're actively having sex with your partner, your ability to objectively observe if they're a suitable partner is diminished significantly. One, if you consider yourself a Christian, the Bible says we shouldn't be practicing sexual immorality, which the Greek for sexual immorality, and James can correct me if I'm wrong here, is the Greek word for that is porneia, which is an all-inclusive term, meaning that fornication, adultery, incest are not what God has for you, and you need to stay clear of that. So not only does the Bible say we shouldn't be having sex before marriage, in addition to that, the science is showing, and whether people want to believe it or not is their own prerogative, that it is not in your best interest to be having sex before a commitment. Because the amount of oxytocin that's released in your brain, which is a pleasure chemical similar to dopamine, it's a bonding chemical. When you have oxytocin, you bond with somebody. A small version of that is like being on a team and you're conquering a victory together. That's like serotonin and oxytocin are being released. Sex, oxytocin is released like crazy. And when you're binding with somebody, it makes it that much harder to break up with them. And if you do break up with them, then that you have baggage from that relationship. I'm not saying you're damaged goods and you can't be used by God. Nope, God is faithful. He can heal all broken wounds and all sins. But for you to consider, if you really want to pursue clarity over intimacy, you need to take sex out of your relationship. And we'll go further into other boundaries as well next week. But with that all being said, our point today is that pursue clarity over intimacy. Because ultimately dating is about evaluation, not a status or achievement.